What's up, everyone? It's Dakota, and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering video. And imagine winning multiple Grand Prix, top 8ing multiple Pro Tours, getting to represent your country in the World Magic Cup, and being considered by a lot of your peers to be one of the greatest players of all time. This player actually exists, and their name is Yuya Watanabe, someone who is a former Pro Tour Hall of Famer and an inaugural member of the Magic Pro League, who all the way back in April of 2019 was caught cheating at the Mythic Championship 2 for having marked cards and subsequently banned for 2.5 years and kicked out of the Magic Hall of Fame. Even if this was the only time that Yuya Watanabe had been cheating, it unfortunately did irreparable damage to his own legacy and put every accomplishment he has ever had under scrutiny. And this is essentially what you sign up for when you decide to cheat. No matter how high or how low the stakes, no matter what the situation might be, you are going to be labeled a cheater, and everything you have ever done is going to be completely tossed out of the window. All the hard work that you probably put in, all undone because of one time deciding to cheat. And for a lot of players, it isn't just cheating the one time, and that has been multiple times they've just been lucky enough to not be caught. And today we're going to be looking at a cheat that is very blatant and trying to go over ways to kind of help you avoid getting cheated by cheaters and being able to call it and point it out, because it looks like we're going to have to self-govern in the Magic community with the fact that there's really no way to permanently ban somebody from playing in any competitive tournaments like we used to when we had the DCI. But before we get into that video and we get into the ways that you can protect yourself from cheating from all these nasty cheaters, if you're not subscribed to the channel and you want to see more videos from me where we go over anything and everything related to competitive Magic for the modern and standard format, please consider subscribing and ring that notification bell so you know when videos get posted. It's a free, easy way to support me and my content. And if you'd like to go even further, if you head down the description down below, you'll find a link to my Discord server, a link to my Twitch channel. I've seen a few people already go over there and follow. I do greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. And of course, check out the Casual Spikes podcast, where we do a lot of the same stuff. We talk very in depth about the metagame and all these major events going on in Magic the Gathering with my co-host Randy over at MTG with Randy. So go ahead and check out the podcast, as well as the code in the description down below for Manatraders. You can use that code to get 5% off your monthly subscription, so you can rent cards from them and play essentially whatever you want in whatever events that you want on Magic Online. I want to thank Manatraders for being the sponsor of the video. Now let's go ahead and check out the video where we probably have one of the most 1990s-esque cheats of all time. So the video in question here is from the NRG Series 10K Standard Showdown that took place about 2 weeks ago from the recording of this video. The game between Sean Gallagher and Connor Pattinson in the top 8 of this event. Connor is up a game, and that's the player that we're going to be focusing on here. And if you look really closely here where I have it stopped, you'll see a card sitting in Connor Pattinson's lap. Now, what could that card be? Obviously, we don't know. It is face down in his lap. Now, this is something that was just completely missed on coverage, and for those of you that are kind of in the know, and I'll kind of spoil it now, Connor did get disqualified from this event, but only after the result of this match was had concluded, and it was actually for a deck registration error, because there's 2 planes in play, and Connor only had 1 planes registered in his deck list, so already there, like that was enough to get him disqualified. So he actually didn't even get disqualified for this cheat here, but we see a card sitting in Connor's lap. We will then, play the video. Oop, here we go. Play the video. And Connor draws his card, thinks for a minute, says whatever. Shuffles, we see 2 cards in hand. Goes to play one of them. And we know it's a Battlefield Forge. We can kind of see it here. Considers, debates for a minute. Am I going to play it? Am I not going to play it? I don't know. Eventually just pulls it back. Activates Rockface Village. Targets the Heartfire Hero. And then just decides to pass the turn here eventually. Sean then just goes to make a treasure token. Nothing really major here. Untaps, draws a card, draws a Ride's End, so that's going to be an answer to the Heartfire Hero, and I believe that they had life totals wrong too, and we'll see why here. Well, no, I think the life totals are right, but Sean is at 5 life. Thinks for a minute, looks at the cards in hand, has a Meticulous Archive and a Ride's End, so ends up playing the Archive, ends up surveilling a card to the top, passes the turn eventually here. And then Connor untaps. We had 2 cards in hand. So the 6-shot show off, there's a Boros Charm, and there is a Battlefield Forge in hand. So shuffles the cards around. Remember, 2 cards that Connor was considering playing on the previous turn here. And now all of a sudden, we're going to see that Connor eventually comes to the conclusion to play a slick shot show off in hand, or plays a slick shot show off from hand. We know that. Now all of a sudden, you see that the card flashes really quickly. So there it is. We can kind of see Connor's hand just a split second. It looks to be I believe it's like something for like Phyrexian Forge or something like that. Essentially, just gets to make a token, and it's really good against the Azorius control decks because it gets around all their sorcery speed removal. You make an increasingly bigger creature that is going to attack and then get sacrificed, and force your opponent later as it gets more oil counters to have to deal with a token that it makes here. But we know that there was a Boros Charm and a Battlefield Forge in Connor's hand on the previous turn. Now all of a sudden there's a Forge and a Slick Shot show off. Well, obviously it's impossible to have 2 different cards that were in your hand on the previous turn be in your hand unless that card that was in Connor's lap ended up being the Forge, which I mean, really at this point, really doesn't matter. But a turn where maybe he doesn't draw a Slick Shot show off, it's a card that he can then play, but then follow up with like a Boros Charm. Well, actually, can't even follow it up with a Boros Charm because the only other 2 red sources in play are the Rock Face Village. So definitely pretty interesting. I would say that this is just something that you would end up having, just magically have 2 cards that you didn't have previously in your hand. Of course, Sean doesn't know that, and the people on coverage didn't actually catch this either until it was kind of all playing out and people looked back and saw, oh, hey, this is a thing that happened. So Connor thinks for a minute, eventually cast Boros Charm to Sean Gallagher, and this will put Sean to 1. Obviously, get a trigger from the Slick Shot show off here, and Sean is just dead to rights at this point. We can Rides End the mouse, but then we can't block the Slick Shot show off. We can then Rides End the Slick Shot show off, but we can't then block the Heartfire Hero because then it's just going to kill us. So Sean looks at his options, debates here, and unfortunately ends up having to concede the game, as we'll find out here. Again, we kind of sit, tank, wait, and then eventually, Rides End, like we can't do anything. Scoops up the cards here, and of course we know that Connor also has the Battlefield Forge in hand, so that would be a way to activate on the Heartfire Hero, put a 3rd counter on it, bump it up to 5 power, so even if there was a counter spell for the Boros Charm, we're not going to be able to block the Heartfire Hero, and then also have it not die. So unfortunately, Sean ends up losing the game, and Connor goes on to win the top 8 match, and of course get disqualified in the top 4 for a deck registration error, not necessarily for the cheat that we saw here. And again, the cheat only kind of came out after the fact when, like, oh my god, like, just as we kind of pointed out here. So this isn't something that players normally do, and of course Connor tried to play it off as very natural by just, again, having the card in his lap, but then just kind of covering up the cards in hand, like reaching down with the other arm to kind of grab the card, and then bring everything back together, and of course drawing a card here. And Sean, and really probably most players in that instance, being none the wiser. I mean, even the commentators, who are trying to look at hands to figure out like what players actually have and what they have going on, didn't really pick up on this either. And I would hope that this isn't something that gets normalized among players who decide to cheat, to just kind of leave cards in their lap. I think definitely with Connor getting caught, especially in the top 8 of a 10K on camera in 4K, that this isn't going to happen again. But this is something to kind of keep an eye on, just constantly asking maybe how many cards your opponent has in hand, making sure that their cards kind of stay above the table instead of going below is definitely a very good thing. But we're also going to be going into some more tips as well to kind of protect yourself from cheaters. So I'm going to transition to the big camera so you can see my big beautiful face. So to understand how to protect ourselves from cheating, we have to understand what cheating actually is. And as basic of a definition as I can give is that cheating is essentially essentially performing an action not within the rules with the intent on gaining an advantage. So an easy example is drawing 2 cards in your draw step instead of 1 when you don't have any cards that tell you to draw an additional card. That can be looked at as gaining an advantage. And at those points, when your opponent draws extra cards or plays extra lands, or even when you do it yourself, you want to be able to call a judge over and have them fix the situation. This does 2 things. And for one, this is probably the perfect response to kind of address a problem that has occurred in the game. Is instead of just saying, okay, that's fine, go ahead and pick that land back up that you played, or whatever the second card was, just put it on top of your library. Involve a judge, because this is going to help them to keep a record of a specific player who committed the infraction. If they get multiple game rule violations, it does lead to game losses, match losses, or potentially even being DQ'd from the tournament. And this helps establish a pattern of that player doing these sort of things. Like if it's just truly a mistake, it probably only happens once. If it happens in round 1, then maybe it happens in like round 5 or round 6. Maybe not necessarily then is it considered like a cheat just because you did it twice, but it definitely, as it stacks up, makes it more and more likely that you are trying to cheat. Again, making a judge aware of this scenario is very important, because if you then all of a sudden let a judge know at the end of the tournament or near the end of the tournament, hey, this happened to me, they're going to tell you, why didn't you call me over there to address the situation? So judges are definitely your best friend here. They don't want to give out game losses. They don't want to give out game rule violations. They don't even want to disqualify players from events. They want to help you play a game of Magic in the most fair way possible to determine a winner in a fair way. So definitely don't be afraid to involve judges in these situations where they do seem like they're minor. These are just, again, small ways that players will kind of cheat to get an advantage. Now, some of the more common ways I would say players are going to cheat is kind of in that way. They're going to try to play extra lands. They're going to try to draw cards. Leaving cards in your lap and then having your cards go below the table, and then all of a sudden them reappearing instead of just leaving them on the table or just keeping them in your hand, whatever the case may be, is definitely very shady. If you catch your opponent like putting their cards like below the table, just ask them very nicely if they'll keep them above, or set them on the table if they have to reach down and go get something, and then just really kind of keep a good eye on them. I know it's very hard to do when you're kind of trying to do your own thing and then your opponent's doing their thing and you're trying to focus on what they're doing and think about what you're going to do, that sort of thing. But that is one of the ways that you can, stop yourself from like very easily, I would say, being cheated in those scenarios, is just being aware of like how many cards you have in your opponent's hand, that sort of thing. Another kind of cheat that we'll see from other players is like picking up a card out of their graveyard when they go to like pick up their library and shuffling it in. Again, I don't think this is something that's necessarily super common, but you can find various different videos on YouTube of players just picking up like a card out of their graveyard, shuffling their deck, going and searching for another card, and that sort of thing. So definitely be on the lookout, like be aware of like what's in your opponent's graveyard, maybe like key important cards, and then just like, oh hey, like I noticed that there was a Malevolent Rumble in your graveyard, and then all of a sudden like you picked up shuffle your deck and Malevolent Rumble isn't there anymore. Where is it? If they put it into their hand, that's kind of like public knowledge. You should be able to know that, write it down, that sort of thing. If they can't tell you where it went, well, there's a good chance that it ended up getting shuffled back in their library. Another way that other players will cheat as well is kind of like stacking their deck. They'll shuffle their deck in a certain way where either they're looking at it, they can see it either in their peripheral vision, or they're directly looking at it. And at least for yourself to not get accused of something like that, you shuffle looking away from your deck. That's typically what I do in paper tournaments, and essentially having your opponent do kind of the same thing where they can't really look and see what they're doing. And of course, always cutting their deck as well, because that will kind of stop them from just being able to manipulate a card to the top of their library and being able to draw a said card that very likely is going to be very good in the matchup, or just help them to kind of assemble their combo, win the game, that sort of thing. And that's kind of some of the probably more blatant and more obvious and more common cheats that players will try to do to get an advantage. Again, one of the big things and one of the biggest takeaways from all of this is to please, please, please involve a judge when these things happen. I know that they seem very minor, but this is one of the easiest ways players can get an advantage. They end up playing an extra land, end up drawing an extra card. It's something that happens, and not just because somebody does that does not mean that they are a cheater, and doesn't mean that they're trying to do it intentionally. However, if you at least make a judge aware of this sort of issue, and this issue then persists throughout the tournament, then you kind of do the community a favor by getting that person at least outed as a cheater, or at least someone that really needs to focus on trying to play the game a lot cleaner, because whatever they're doing, like they obviously have developed some pretty bad habits that they have to try to work through and just get out of them, because you will be labeled as a cheater. As we saw, even some of the best players in the game, who again considered pillars of competitive Magic, who have all these accomplishments and everything like that, and held in very high regard, have had no problem being completely excommunicated out of the community and essentially just forgotten about the time. So definitely don't think that you're above it. If you see cheating, or you suspect that someone is cheating, even in a game that you're not involved in, please let a judge know. Don't try to intervene or anything like that. Just make them aware of it so that they can watch what is going on and hopefully deter that person from cheating, either in in that same game, obviously, and then in future games as well. But yeah, that's gonna do for me this video. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like on the video. Comment down below what you want to see on the channel next. I kind of have some ideas floating around, so I would definitely appreciate any and all takes there. And yeah, that's gonna do for me this video. Hope you all enjoyed it. I hope to see you all in the next one.